Hello, I'm Lauren Haldeman, Editor-in-Chief of the Journal of Nutrition Education and Behavior, where we're advancing research, policy, and practice. And each month, we select an article to feature as a press release with an accompanying podcast. And today's podcast article can be read in full at www.jneb.org for free for the next 3 months. And today I'm speaking with Kathy Hu and Kathy's mentor, Dr. ALyssa Button, who are authors for the article titled Adolescent Diet Quality, Cardiometabolic Risk, and Adiposity, a Prospective Cohort. And I'm really glad to have you with us today, Kathy and ALyssa. Can you both tell us a little bit about yourselves?
Yes. Hi, my name is Kathy Hu, and I am a senior at the Episcopal School of Baton Rouge in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And I've always gravitated toward math, so I was really thankful to have this opportunity to work with Dr. Button and Dr. Staiano on this project.
Great. Thanks, Kathy.
My name is ALyssa Button. I'm a postdoctoral researcher at Pennington Biomedical Research Center. My PhD is in combined counseling and school psychology. And my primary interests are in the areas of child and family intensive health behavior and lifestyle interventions, psychosocial determinants of health, and dissemination and implementation science. I'm very motivated to develop and enhance behavioral interventions for health behavior and to create accessible pathways to evidence-based treatment for underserved communities and families.
All right. Thanks very much. And I'm really glad to have you both with us today. Can you give us a little bit of an overview of this paper, including what you did, as well as your results?
Of course. So Dr. Staiano was the principal investigator for a local study called Tiger Kids. And our paper is a secondary analysis of the data from that study, which included 192 adolescents who were aged 10 to 16 years old. And they had a baseline and follow-up surveys that were 2 years after. So this was a cohort study. And all of the adolescents had full anthropometrics, height, weight, waist circumference, etc. measurements. And then they also had 24-hour dietary recalls and CMR measurements, or cardiometabolic risk measurements. And so dietary quality was measured using this ASA 24, which is an online assessment tool. So adolescents would report what they ate for 24 hours. And so the HEI 2015 is the Healthy Eating Index 2015 score, which ranges from 0 to 100, with 100 signifying the best diet quality. And so we used the ASA 24 results and a SAS macro to create these HEI 2015 scores for each of the adolescents. And the CMR factors that we used were HDL cholesterol, triglycerides, waist circumference, HOMA-IR, and mean arterial pressure, or MAP. And a standardized Z-score was calculated for each component and was used in the statistical analyses. And for table 1, we used pair t-test to compare the mean values from baseline to follow up and find out the significance. And then for table 2, we used the general linear model to test for the differences in CMR factors and body composition according to the different diet scores. And what we found was that the HEI 2015 scores were generally low at baseline with 47.6, and at follow-up they were at 46.3 with no difference. And we also found that based on the general linear model, that the baseline HEI 2015 was inversely associated with follow-up total CMR Z-score, HOMA-IR Z-score, waist circumference Z-score, BMI percentile, lean mass, and fat mass. And we also conducted some sensitivity analyses, and we found that several independent food subcomponents like green and beans, seafood and plant proteins, whole fruit, and whole grains were inversely related to CMR factors and body composition. And with this study, our results showed that when compared to the national average, the Louisiana adolescents were slightly lower for the HEI 2015 score, with theirs being 47.6 and 46.3, and then the national being from 49 to 53. And so our main finding and conclusion was that healthy diets decrease obesity and CMR, and there needs to be more intervention for diet quality for these adolescents.
Great. Thanks for that great overview. And I also you focused on a group of individuals, adolescents, that's really underrepresented in the literature. And I want to thank you for that. I'm also want to just say how impressed I am that there was a recruitment of 192 adolescents where you've collected such a large amount of data. So that's really quite impressive. So why is adolescence a critical period for understanding dietary patterns?
That's a great question. So the results of this study confirms what we know, which is that adolescents in this age range are not meeting the recommendations for a healthy, well-rounded diet. And our results show that these dietary intake patterns and associated health risks are established early on and continue to be robust across our 2-year observational period. And so this is really an important time in development to establish well-rounded eating habits to promote long-term health and, importantly, healthy habits. And while this was not an interventional study, it was observational, some things that we can take from this is that when we think about interventions for this age group, we need to also be considering the whole context of their experience, including their family members as change agents and the school setting. So those are just some important considerations for working with adolescents.
Sure, there's so many factors that go into eating behaviors, particularly among this group. So it's quite a study that you've done here. So in thinking about the patterns that you found, what did the study observe about the patterns of adolescent diet quality and health outcomes?
Yeah, so the youth in our sample were not consuming enough of the adequacy components, so things like greens and beans, seafood and plant proteins, whole fruit, whole grains, compared to moderation components like added sugar and saturated fat. And so we're seeing that overall patterns of intake versus specific nutrition components like specifically added sugars are what are contributing to associations of body fat and cardiometabolic health. And so we can't necessarily point our fingers at 1 or 2 food groups to blame for body composition. We're really looking at the overall picture.
Okay. Wonderful. You have some very interesting findings as a result of the study. So is there anything else that you'd like to share?
Well, we were talking about methodology, and I just think something that the PI did really well about this study, I was excited. This was my first time working with data from a DEXA and an MRI, and then, like you mentioned, that massive sample with complete ALyssa 24 data. So that was really exciting and just good methodologies.
Great, nice and rigorous, leading to some really important findings. Great. Anything else, Kathy, do you have anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I think as an adolescent myself, I think doing this study and seeing how adolescents, their diet quality affects their future health is really significant whenever you're considering what you're intaking every day and how that can affect your health in the future. And so I think this study was really beneficial in showing that more intervention needs to be had for adolescents who you've mentioned are lesser mentioned in the literature.
Sure. And I will also say, now that you've said as an adolescent myself, I love that we have a high school senior as a first author on a very impressive paper. You clearly have got some very exciting things ahead of you in this profession or whatever profession it is that you choose. So I'm really impressed with your contribution to the literature and to the field at such a young age. And before we end, do you have anything else you'd like to include?
I do have a couple acknowledgments I'd like to make. First and foremost, we would like to thank the children and parents who participated in this study and gave their time to help us collect data. And then also our co-authors, Claire Tate, Chelsea Crock, Kathy Champagne, and the PI, Amanda Stiano. And then finally, we have funders who supported this work from the USDA, a Nutrition and Obesity Research Center grant, and also one of the co-authors was supported by a T32. And thank you so much for having us today. And we really appreciate the opportunity to speak about this work. And we're grateful for all of the interest.
Of course. And thank you very much, Kathy and ALyssa, for spending this time with me. And to all of our listeners, remember, you can read this fabulous article in full at www.jneb.org for the next 3 months.